In less than 24 hours, the Board of Regents has already named the new interim president at Oklahoma State. The timing seems a little sketchy. Something smells a little fishy. And what might be great for Oklahoma State might also not be so great now for Mike Gundy.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is upon us. There's not a better way for you to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 back in bonus bets. All you have to do is download the app or head on over to FanDuel.com to get started today. We are going to get started in the conversation of the new interim president that has been named at Oklahoma State. I feel some type of way about how this whole thing has transpired, and I do have a little bit of a reservation in the new naming. But he is a through and through Cowboy. He's a diehard Oklahoma State guy from Henrietta, Oklahoma. And this does make a whole lot of sense. But it also raises a legitimate amount of questions, in my personal opinion. And those questions are being, is this a yes man for the Board of Regents? The timing seems a little sketchy to me. The fact that there was a little bit of a push to get Dr. Kayse Shrum out, the way that it transpired seems a little sketchy. The way that she willingly bowed out so quickly because she didn't want to deal with some of the hooliganry that was going on behind the scenes. It smells a little fishy. And not even 24 hours later, we already have somebody named, which leads me to believe that this was kind of by design, that they had an interim in mind already, and Jim Hess might be a great ambassador for Oklahoma State. He's a very well-renowned, in the higher education. He's in the Oklahoma Higher Education Hall of Fame. He also comes from an osteopathic background. So the Oklahoma medicine and the historical things that he's been able to provide to put Oklahoma State medicine up towards the top of conversational pieces, obviously are going to be huge for Oklahoma State. Perhaps he might have the ability to help the vet med to get off of the bottom of the pile as well. Those are all good things. Is he going to be out on campus, walking around, talking to students, welcoming everybody, delivering pizza to sororities and things of that nature? Likely not, which is one of the reasons why the student body is going to be pretty upset that this whole thing has gone down the way that it has. And again, the timing of this seems a little sketchy to me. It almost feels like that Jim was set up to be this guy. And my reservation is the Board of Regents clearly felt some type of way about Dr. Kayse Shrum, and there's no way you can deny that the way the Mike Gundy situation kind of came about and the fact that Dr. Kayse Shrum and Chad Weiberg decided to back Mike Gundy instead of having the back of some of the Board of Regents, it caused some animosity. Like, there's nobody that can pretend that that's not part of this equation. So with that being part of this ordeal, to have somebody named so quickly almost makes me believe that this is just an extension of the Board of Regents. They had somebody in mind that knew that wasn't really going to give them a whole lot of pushback. Unlike Dr. Kayse Shrum, she was going to do what was best for Oklahoma State. And I have no doubt that Jim is going to do potentially the same things. But my questioning here is the fact that the Board of Regents already had this set up, or if they made a decision so quickly, they're not going to put somebody in there that's going to give them pushback. That's one of the biggest reasons that Kayse Shrum is no longer the president of Oklahoma State. And again, there's no way that you can tell me this potential impropriety and misappropriation of funds is the real reason why this is all happening. Could it potentially be a factor? Sure. But another factor is the fact that the Board of Regents look weak and feckless, and they don't want to go through that again. So they're not going to bring somebody in that's going to offer a significant amount of pushback like Dr. Kayse Shrum was not only willing to do, but obviously did do. That's my fear here. And if the Board of Regents have an axe to grind with Kayse Shrum, Chad Weiberg could be next. Mike Gundy could be on the chopping block after that. Now, they are viewing this from a business landscape, which is why a 3-9 season and the way things had gone the last few years in regards to some of the recruiting and the allocation of how the NIL was going to be spent and wasn't going to be used properly to get Oklahoma State football players the right amount to be competitive. All of that is somewhat debatable. What is not debatable is the fact that they acted off of emotion. What started as some semblance of a business conversation, and that Mike Gundy having a 3-9 season was not good for business, and Mike Gundy have a revolving over and over 5-year contract, not good for business, especially when the scale was escalating upwards for his buyout. All of that not being good for business. I get it. I understand it. But again, this is not seemingly business related. And if they had the axe to grind to get Dr. Kayse Shrum to step down because there are some impropriety allegations, what could be next? Could it be Chad Weiberg? Because clearly he was willing to stand next to Shrum and back Mike Gundy, as opposed to taking the recommendation and pushing that deadline that was put out by the Board of Regents. As we discussed a little bit yesterday, they look like the Board of Rejects. So any hire, especially in this time frame, was going to lead to some questions of, is this a legitimate hire, or is this an extension of the Board of Regents? And my fear is it's just that Mr. Jim Hess, although he's a diehard Cowboy through and through, Oklahoma native, who's been very instrumental in some of the medicine side of things coming up for Oklahoma State, and even some of the buildings that have been built, not only in Stillwater, but elsewhere, pertaining to the business model, is partially because of this individual. But at the same time, they're not going to bring somebody in that just is going to give pushback, because they just found a way to get rid of the individual giving a good amount of the pushback. So that's my only concern here. I have talked to some people that think he's an incredible ambassador for Oklahoma State, and he's a very intelligent mind, and he's a very kind guy, but he does have certain things that he would like to see done at Oklahoma State, and I don't know if that aligns with what Chad Weiberg and Dr. Shrum had pictured for Oklahoma State. So it may not be a bad thing, but it does beg the question, is if these individuals that did not want Mike Gundy to continue to be the head coach, are they going to continue to grind this axe? Is Dr. Shrum enough for them to calm down a little bit? Or does this grow more legs? Now that they have proven that they could potentially get a president out, could they flex their muscles even more now with an individual that's probably not going to tell them no? That could extend and spiderweb out to affect not only Chad Weiberg, but Mike Gundy. Because if they wanted him gone under certain stipulations and he refused to play ball, there are going to be some more butthurt feelings lingering in that room. So again, I think that this whole thing is a black eye for Oklahoma State. I think that the timing of it all is kind of skeptical. The reasonings behind it make me even more skeptical. Now, the less than 24 hours already having a guy lined up makes me feel like this was by design, and this is the guy that they wanted to step in. And if that's the case, given what the Board of Regents has done over the last few months, that's not good. We need the exact opposite of a yes man in there. We need another individual, much like Dr. Kayse Shrum, that is willing to have a little bit of pushback, because the Mike Gundy situation is not going to resonate well with some of those people in that room. Clearly, there is some pettiness. There's some animosity. And instead of letting it go and doing what's best for Oklahoma State, some of them are holding on to it. And I have a fear that that means there's more to come from this. Would they be stupid to fire Mike Gundy, especially right now after Gundy fired the entirety of the staff? For sure. But it doesn't mean that they might not be looking for a reason to push Chad Weiberg around, or a reason to push Mike Gundy around. Whether you love Mike Gundy, you hate Mike Gundy, or you fall somewhere in the middle, this is not a good look for Oklahoma State. And although Mr. Hess is probably a phenomenal individual as a hire, I don't know that he's good for the current situation of how things are going, because the last thing we need is another Board of Regents yes individual. We don't need that. We need somebody that's got some backbone, that's willing to stand up and say, no, we're not doing that. That doesn't make sense. This name shouldn't be on this building, no matter how many people are going to cry about it. And I don't think that this guy is going to fit that bill if he was already pre-designed to fill this void. That's my issue with it. Hopefully I'm wrong. but it smells weird, looks weird, quacks like a duck, walks like a duck. It might just be a duck. The Cowboys get to take on the Oregon Ducks at some point in time, but before we do that, we do have to pay attention to the fact that we have a Super Bowl here, and Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the daily fantasy sports action. With the big game right around the corner, there's not a better way to get involved with daily fantasy sports than with Prize Picks. With over 10 million members and billions of winnings all around the world, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. The pick more than or pick less than model is the best when it comes to simplicity and maximization. And if you are right, you can maximize by getting up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks has a free pick where a big game from Patrick Mahomes might only include throwing for one more yard. You can pair that with a correct pick and you are cashing out. This week, you'll be looking for Travis Kelce to have more or less than in the receiving yards department. You could potentially be looking at Patrick Mahomes more than or less than of the passing department. Check out all the promos, and you can get the super sweet Millie Winter big game lineups. If you hit the tail on the lineup that goes 3 for 3, then you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is Locked On College, all one word, for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Get in on the Prize Picks action because it is your opportunity with Prize Picks to run your game. So Haas Haney was able to help us kind of get a peek behind the curtain at some of the Cowboy wide receivers that he's not only been impressed with, but should have the ability to get Oklahoma State's wide receiver room back where it used to be, which is having perennial all-stars that are capable of being first, second, third round draft picks on a continuous basis. That is where Oklahoma State finds itself. And we just recently found out that Royal Capel, the Cowboy freshman that will be not only early, but is in Stillwater, was first team All-State in the state of Texas. So congratulations to Royal Capel. He might be an individual that has the capability of pushing for playing time right away, especially as a true freshman. This conversation pertains primarily to wide receivers, right? The ability for wide receivers to come in and play immediately is becoming much more renowned. If you look at guys like Ryan Williams at Alabama, and you look at what Smith was able to do at Ohio State. You got Coleman as a freshman wide receiver over at Auburn. The idea that freshmen need a lot of time to develop is starting to change because of the 7-on-7 environment and the ability to get the top-notch training throughout the course of their high school careers. So not only is it a fun, sexy position, but it's also a position where the youth doesn't really have the same effect as, say, a running back or a linebacker, where you're having to diagnose so much that you have to learn how to take the right angles and sift through the information. It's a little bit different as a wide receiver. But outside of Royal Capel coming in early, we also have the Enid standout that was trained and coached by Rashawn Woods and Tyke Andrews that should be able to factor into some of the things this season. You also have Gavin Freeman coming over from OU. We got to see glimpses of what he could do throughout the course of the season last year before he gave way in some playing time to DeJuan Lofton, the Virginia Tech transfer that has a lot of capabilities. So those two individuals, just simply going back and forth, have already provided a lot in the arsenal for whomever is going to win the quarterback battle at Oklahoma State. Then you have the speedster, who is a track national champion in 2022. He also finished third in nationals in the 100-meter, and Jalen Lloyd. You have Sam Jackson. These guys like Jalen Lloyd and Sam Jackson, Trey Griffiths, are guys that have been able to work with Haas Haney, Garrett Rangel, and obviously you have Zane Flores with a good connection to a lot of these individuals. Trey Griffiths, he was one of the only primary targets we had at wide receiver this previous season. Walked in the building at 6'3", 200 pounds, was a dude that was heavily sought after by a lot of SEC schools and all of the other Big 12 schools, not only in the state of Texas, but in the surrounding areas. Cam Hurd is somebody that has got a significant, well, I wouldn't say significant, but a decent amount of playing time here and there which shows that he's kind of right on the verge of being able to take that next step in the evolutionary process of wide receiver position at Oklahoma State. They still have Kyler Pearson listed, the 5'6", 160-pound wide receiver that could do a little bit of everything, that did do a little bit of everything at KU. He could also be a running back. He also gets in the return game. Having somebody like that with a lot of the experience and different mindset when it comes to different kinds of coaching could be instrumental in the wide receiver room and just the knowledge-based things that they can learn. You also have another young man showing up as a freshman at 6'2", 205 pounds in Cam Powell. Cam Powell could be an individual that is pushing for viability at starting or at least playing time pretty early. You have the Purdue transfer, Shamar Rigby, who much like Hoss Haney at TCU was too good to keep off the field. So even though he was buried a little bit on the depth chart, they still found ways to get him in the action, whether it be reverses or just putting him in motion or screens. They found ways to get Shamar Rigby the ball because at 6'3", 195 pounds, those guys with that kind of size and that kind of catch radius do not grow on trees. Speaking of good size and solid catch radius, we have Talon Shetron. Injuries have been the only derailment in his career so far at Oklahoma State, other than some of the talent that we've had ahead of him. But we do know that obviously Dejon Stribling was able to take his talents to Ole Miss. He garnered that level of attention. He garnered that level of financial compensation. And we're in a little bit of a rebuild, so we probably weren't going to spend all of that much. And then the guy who I've been pushing ever since last season as a bigger version of Leon Johnson and Io Shotomide-King. It was so nice to hear Hoss Haney talk about how special Io Shotomide-King is as well, not only on air, but off air as well. So the connection that some of the quarterbacks already have with this roster is going to be absolutely massive to the success that we have in this upcoming season. But just like getting a quarterback like Hoss Haney to come to Oklahoma State, part of it is going to be the distribution of the football. We're going to be a run-first team most likely, but with Doug Meacham and the ability of all four quarterbacks to be mobile enough to account for a different numerical advantage, potentially on defense, it should open up the offense as well. Just like a wide receiver is always going to have the benefit in a scramble drill, these wide receivers are looking to accomplish some things and kind of change the trajectory of their career. And somebody like Sam Jackson that not only played quarterback at TCU, but also found a way to get on the field as a wide receiver at Auburn, he's only scratching the surface of what his capabilities are. But again, the cerebral side of the game is going to be pretty advanced for him. So when there is a scramble drill, he knows what to look for, what angles to take, and how to get off of the DB and make the window better for the quarterback. All of these things, I think, are going to be instrumental in Oklahoma State getting the wide receiver room back to where it's used to being. And that is putting guys in the NFL draft. And we have more than enough when it comes to speed. We got 6'4", 6'5 guys. We got 6'3 guys, 6'2 guys, 6-foot guys. We've got your tried and true slot receivers. We've even got your jack of all trades like Kyler Pearson. So the prospects for Oklahoma State wide receivers getting back to the level are pretty good. Not to mention, as much as Casey Dunn was a very good developmental wide receivers coach, so is Doug Meacham. Doug Meacham has sent double-digit wide receivers to the NFL, most of them being within the first 3 rounds of the draft at multiple places, not just Oklahoma State and TCU. So the wide receiver development is not going to go down. With the addition of Theron H coming over, I would imagine it's only going to uptick. So you have some of the genius that is Doug Meacham, and now you have that combined with Theron H and a lot of veteran leadership when it comes to guys like DeJuan Lofton and Gavin Freeman and Talon Shetron. And even now, Tyke Andrews brings a little bit of that to the table. Trey Griffiths has had a year in the system. Io Shotomide-King's had a year in the system. Jalen Lloyd was a very important piece for Nebraska. He was their speed demon that they would use to take the top off of the defense. So whether it be the return game, the slot game, the flexibility, Y, Z, X, we seem to have a lot of it covered, and we have multiple wide receiver coaches that should be able to implement their system and the ability to kind of get the defensive back on their heels and make adjustments on the fly to open up the offense a little bit more. We're not going to be as predictable as under Casey Dunn. We're likely not going to have another conversation of a South Alabama player or a lower-level athlete laughing about how predictable all of our plays were and how they could basically script what we were going to run. And sure enough, even in the second and third quarters, we were still following the same script because we're very one-dimensional or we're very elementary when it comes to our offensive innovations. That is going to change under Doug Meacham. And then plus, he also has the ability to pull from Kevin Johns, who's been a quarterback coach, wide receiver coach, coordinator, co-coordinator, which is something that Tim Rattay could not bring to the fold. Tim Rattay had a good NFL background. He had a good knowledge of the position, but he couldn't implement some of the offensive innovations that maybe Kayse Dunn could have utilized, or maybe Kayse Dunn wouldn't have used any of it. We don't know. But what we do know is a lot is different now. The expectations are allowed to be higher because the basement, being 3 wins, is, well, just that. It's a basement. Speaking of, well, there's no basement level here except for Cowboy basketball. That could change. It should change. We have the opportunity to get a W here because it's at home, and the home record's significantly different. What else could be different is your monetary gains with FanDuel. With Super Bowl 59, it is 1 game, 2 teams, crazy possibilities. There's not a better way for you to make it more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the very first touchdown, who's going to win the MVP, who's going to win the coin toss, who's going to get the next touchdown, the next first down, it doesn't matter. FanDuel makes it easy for you to get in on the action. With live betting on games all day long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the very final whistle. The live betting feature is going to let you stay up to speed no matter what's happening on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 back in bonus bets just for participating in the Super Bowl, that is the winning ticket and the winning formula for you. Download the app today or head on over to FanDuel.com to get started. You can bet just $5, and if you win, you can score $200 back in bonus bets with FanDuel.com. That's 200 bones back in bonus bets for you watching the Super Bowl, throwing down a $5 holler bet with FanDuel. Go there today, download the app because it is the #1 sports book for Super Bowl 59 and the NFL. So we'll keep on trucking right along here and shift gears to a little bit of an all-sports check-in. Of course, Cowgirl softball has a few games left in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, so they're not quite done. They've got a couple games that are going to be a little bit potentially problematic. Louisiana Tech's not a bad ball club. Northern Colorado. Both should be W's after watching what we just did to number 9 in the country, Florida State. Yet we get another shot at Florida State over the weekend. So Sunday, we'll get to find out, was that the real Florida State? Was that the real Oklahoma State, or was one of them having a potentially off day? We'll find out that very soon as Cowgirls get ready to punch their ticket to Oklahoma City. Meanwhile, Cowboy basketball has a winner on hand because the game is in Gallagher-Iba Arena against Arizona State, who sits just 1 spot above us at 14th in the Big 12. But other than Arizona State being equally as downtrodden on the season as our Cowboys are, we are 8-2 at home, and we're like 1-9 on the road. Just what I was asking for when the season started. Take care of Gallagher-Iba Arena, because if you can build the fan base back to Gallagher-Iba being an experience, potentially you can bring the whole fan base back, bring the basketball brand back, and we can start traveling better as well. But we get to take on the Sundevils this weekend in Gallagher-Iba Arena. Also in Gallagher-Iba Arena this weekend is the Cowgirls, as they take on the number 12 ranked Kansas State Lady Wildcats, who are 22-2 and first place in the Big 12. The benefit we do have when it comes to tie-breaking scenarios, the 3 teams ahead of us are Baylor, TCU, and Kansas State. We've already knocked down TCU. We've already knocked down Baylor. If we can knock down Kansas State, that gives us quite a bit of advantages as the remainder of the Big 12 season shakes out. So this is a absolutely massive game for Oklahoma State, J.C. Hoyt, Kansas State, to make a determination on who is going to win the regular season Big 12 championship and what is going to ultimately determine what the seeding is for the Big 12 tournament at the end of the season. The Cowgirls have the ability to win it all, but getting in the regular season race action gets a whole lot better if you can knock off Kansas State. And then lastly, we do have wrestling as they get to go on the road to take on Arkansas Little Rock. And this is not a slouch. Arkansas Little Rock is ranked number 16 in America. They're 14-2 on the season, and they're coached by not only one, not only two, but three former Cowboys. The head coach, Neil Irisman, was a Big 12 tournament champion as a Cowboy. Albert White had a phenomenal record as an Oklahoma State Cowboy, and we just recently remember Austin Schaefer from the 2016-2017 range, who did so many things, was a true Iron Man for Oklahoma State. All of those dudes are bringing in a lot of anticipation. Arkansas Little Rock has become somewhat of a destination if you're looking to kind of rejuvenate your career. They take on the number 2 ranked Cowboys, and this is not going to be easy. 125-pound Troy Spradley should get the W over either Tyson Roche or Jaden Carson. Either one of those individuals shouldn't really give Troy Spradley much of a difficulty. Now, 133, a completely different story. They have number 8 in America at 13-3, Nasir Bailey. Nasir Bailey should be able to beat both Reese Whitcraft or Kel Hughes, whichever individual we decide to roll out there. So that would be a big upset for the Cowboys if we could somehow get that one done. 141, they've got Brennan Van Hock that is 10-5 on the season. That is likely to go up against Tegan Jamison if Tegan Jamison is healthy. If Tegan Jamison is not healthy, Colter Burton might still get the W here, so this could still tip in the way of the Cowboys regardless of whether Tegan is ready to rock and roll or not. 149 pounds might be the most interesting just because they have former Cowboy Jordan Williams with a 15-3 record, ranked number 12 in the country, going up against Stillwater High School's own Carter Young or Cutter Sheets, whichever Cowboy wrestler rolls out there. They're going to be ranked lower than Jordan Williams because Carter Young's ranked 17th and Cutter Sheets hasn't quite gotten to the rankings yet. So either way that one shakes out, that could be a W for Arkansas Little Rock, and it could be a former Cowboy that does it. 157, Caleb Fish should be able to get this thing done, but it's not going to be easy because they have number 14 in America going up against our number 12 in America, Caleb Fish versus Matty Bianchi. I might be saying that name wrong, and I apologize if I am. 165-pounder, Cam Amin, 12-4 on the year, ranked number 6 in America, takes on number 33rd ranked Joseph Bianchi. I'm probably saying that name wrong. They're obviously related. Sorry for murdering the names, fellas. 174 pounds. My favorite dude to watch, Dean Hamady Jr., undefeated, 17-0 on the season. Should make pretty quick work of poor Tyler Brennan. 184 pounds. Should be a little bit more interesting as number 17 ranked Brock DeSignore goes up against our own Dustin Plott, number 3 in the country, and 14-2. 197-pounder. That is the ring dinger of the event other than the former Cowboy going up against his old squad because 197-pounder Stephen Little is 14-1 and ranked number 5 in America going up against our Luke Serber, who's number 7 in the country and 18-1. That is going to be a barn burner. And then at heavyweight, we have Wyatt Hendrickson. Wyatt Hendrickson is going to do Wyatt Hendrickson things, and it's not going to be all that close when it comes to the heavyweights. But there's enough weights in here to make this thing interesting. And as we all know, injuries play a factor. We did not know that Tegan Jamison was not able to wrestle this last duel, so we don't know if some of this is still up in the air. But regardless, Arkansas Little Rock is doing a lot of massive things with a lot of massive names in Oklahoma State wrestling. Having a staff full of former Cowboys has got to be good. This is good for the sport of wrestling, and it's going to be showcased live on UFC Fight Pass as they're doing some of the prelims for the Duplessis versus Sean Strickland fight. So you can see UFC Fight Pass to watch this one, which is also great for the sport and great for Arkansas Little Rock. So this is going to be an exciting weekend for Oklahoma State as a whole. It's going to be exciting times coming up, but that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. Do me a favor, go like the daggone thing. Dislike it if you don't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe my podcast, people. You're the bricks, the bread, the butter, the fountain, the fondue, the funny stuff, the funky stuff. You're all of it. I appreciate you. Do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave a review. That is all, folks, a.k.a. later, my taters.